Good morning, Mets fans, and welcome to a Friday edition of Driving with Mr. Met. I am Mr. Met, and despite the fact that earlier this week I didn't think I'd be back before the end of the week, there were a couple of newsworthy items that I'd read about last night and earlier again this morning that I thought were worth sharing, and I wanted to do that this morning. So one of these items is sort of a rumor, newsworthy rumor, and the other is sort of a tie-in to that based on something I watched last night on SNY. First, the rumor about Jay Bruce. Read it last night and read it again this morning that both the Mets and Jay Bruce are interested in a reunion. And if you've been listening to me talk on here, I've been saying that that makes the most sense. In Jay Bruce, you'd get a guy who has 30-plus home run potential, who plays right field, a position of need, who plays first base as needed, and it just makes to me the most sense. He's a guy who played here last year. He got experience on two fronts. Number one, in New York. He played in New York for almost a full season, spread across 2016 and 2017. And he also has experience with the new manager, with Mickey Callaway. If you remember, of course, Jay Bruce was traded to the Indians last year, and he spent the last couple of weeks of the season in Cleveland under the manager, pitching coach, Mickey Callaway. So those two are now familiar with one another. It just makes an awful lot of sense for the Mets to bring back a commodity that they know, and to bring Jay Bruce back on maybe hopefully a 3-year deal that's in the 40-some million range. It'll be interesting to see how the market develops for players like Jay Bruce. It's interesting to me to see his name thrown out there with Logan Morrison and Adam Lind, who we've talked about earlier this week. I think Bruce is better than both of those guys. I think he's got the career to back that up. He's always been consistent. He's always been a consistent 30 home run guy. Never been a high batting average guy, but you don't need him to be. You know, if you can get him to hit between 240 and 260, driving 100-plus runs, which he did last year, hit over 30, which he did last year, you know, that's a good thing. And so we'll see what happens with the market. We'll see how guys like Morrison, guys like Lind, what kind of offers they're getting, what kind of offers they're fielding. That's going to, for me, set the table for whether Jay Bruce is gettable on a team-friendly-ish contract, or whether he'll price himself out of the Mets' hands. Segueing from Jay Bruce, I watched a clip on Mets Hot Stove, or from Mets Hot Stove last night, where Anthony DiComo, Mark Carrig, Gary Apple, and Nelson Figueroa were talking about the one guy that they thought the Mets should get. And they had a couple of good ideas and good suggestions. But Gary Apple was fixated on Lorenzo Cain, and I've talked about him before. And Mark Carrig, I think, put it best when he said, why do you feel like we need to get the Mets need to get a center fielder when they have a Gold Glove center fielder on their team? And he's, of course, talking about Juan Lagares. Nelson Figueroa made a good comment as well. He basically said, how many more times are we going to have to say, hey, Juan, we'll give you a couple of weeks or a couple of months to see if you can handle the everyday job? The point taken from that conversation for me was, number one, and Carrig pointed this out, who cares what his batting average is? Juan Lagares is a Gold Glove center fielder, possibly the best center fielder in baseball. Ender Inciarte might disagree with that, but Juan Lagares is a fantastic center fielder. If he hits 230, Carrig said it best, and I kind of agree, who cares? Because he will lock down one of the most important defensive positions on the team. That up-the-middle defense that you always hear so much about is so important, and if you've got a guy like Lagares who can cover a ton of ground in either direction, both toward left field and right field, can go back on the ball better than probably anybody I've ever seen. Perhaps Carlos Beltran compares to him in terms of his ability to just track balls down and get great reads and great jumps on balls that are hit in the gaps. Lagares is just an absolute stud center fielder on the defensive side of the ball. If his offense develops, fantastic, great, but as Mark Carrig said, and as I agree with, who cares? I was thinking about defensive experts, and sticking with the Mets, look at the best infield ever. You know, the old Sports Illustrated cover from 1999 with John Olerud and Fonzie and Robin Ventura. Who was that fourth member of that group, that quadruped of infielders? That's right, it was light-hitting / offensively challenged shortstop, defensive wizard, Rey Ordonez. Did anybody complain about Ordonez's inability to hit? I mean, it was pre-Twitter, so probably everyone was complaining, but we didn't have any way to find out. But look, Rey Ordonez played a fantastic shortstop. He was a big part of those teams in the late 90s and early 2000s being such good teams. The defense is so important, and I know it gets ignored a lot. And again, another point that Craig made, it's harder to justify and come up with statistics to measure defense. It's much easier to do that for offense, and he's right. But look at the past. Look at what a guy like Rey Ordonez did for the Mets, and let's start looking at Juan Lagares in that same light, as a guy who's already on the team. He's already under contract. It's a team-friendly contract, and they're not paying him too much. Put him in center field. Let him stay there. If you go out and get Jay Bruce, he can start the season in right field. He can platoon at first base with Dominic Smith as needed, and Michael Conforto can ease his way back into the everyday role in right field, coming off of his shoulder surgery. I think that's the most efficient use of the Mets' money at this point in terms of filling holes that they have on this team. Filling a hole in center field is not really filling a big hole. It's a hole, but it's not as glaring as some of these other positions of need, like third base, like the bullpen, like possibly first base. So I really liked the idea of giving Juan Lagares the chance to take the ball and run with it, and to let him know that the starting position is yours on opening day, provided you're not hurt. But why not? Give him a chance. Show him that you're confident in him. Give him the pat on the back that he needs and say, you're the man, let's do this. And if he plays himself into the everyday lineup, that's a good problem to have. Because if you got Jay Bruce, assuming they sign Jay Bruce and he's playing a good right field, and Conforto comes back and he's got to play, then you've got a trade chip in Juan Lagares, who's making little money, and gives an opportunity for the Mets to trade him, if he's having a good year, for someone great. It's just a win-win to me, and I think it makes the most sense. What do you guys think? Let me know in the comments section below if Juan Lagares is the best option for the Mets in 2018 to play center field. Or hit me up on Twitter if you're not already following me there. You can do so at Mr_Met. I thank you for watching the video, and as always, let's go Mets.